This is The Mint live on ZTN Prime, your sneak peek into the world of business, finance, and economies. I'm Ibrahim Nabunda. We're coming to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Let's get started. Now, coming up, Zimbabwe's efforts to strengthen local production are increasingly focused on consumer behavior, retail trends, and manufacturing capacity. A recent national survey is capturing insights on product preferences at a time when retail and wholesale account for a quarter of the economy. The results are expected to inform both business and policy decisions. As the country positions itself for trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area, concerns remain around the readiness of local industries. Issues like production costs, supply gaps, and quality standards persists. At the same time, digital platforms and influencer campaigns are being explored to shape perceptions and promote local alternatives in a competitive market. We speak to Alois Burutsa, By Zimbabwe General Manager, right here on The Mint. The Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Of course, you're watching The Mint as we come to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Now we take a look at our main story in detail. As retail and wholesale sectors grow to dominate Zimbabwe's economy, a new survey reveals that consumers, of course, have a preference for a new brand of products on Zimbabwe's shelves. With the AfCFTA on the horizon, the focus is now on whether local industries can deliver both at home and across borders. Now, I'm joined in studio by Alois Burutsa, the General Manager of By Zimbabwe, to take a deep dive on this very subject. Mr. Burutsa, hello and welcome to The Mint.
Hi, Ibn. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Good afternoon, Zimbabwe.
Fantastic. Now, to get the ball rolling, what exactly is the mandate of By Zimbabwe?
By Zimbabwe is basically an organization that is private sector driven, but government supported, whose mandate is to push for the production and consumption of Zimbabwean-made quality, I need to emphasize quality, Zimbabwean-made goods and services. In short, what we are saying is our mandate basically is to say at a government level, at a business level, even at an individual level, whenever you are making a purchase decision, please prioritize buying from local companies, locally made products, right? That way you are creating jobs, you are creating wealth and pride for Zimbabweans, and that is why By Zimbabwe was established.
Right. I would ask then to say, what is your assessment of the current state of affairs where domestic consumption of domestically produced goods on the basis of the key insights that emerged from your national consumer preferences survey that, of course, inculcated beverages, food, clothing, and electronics?
Yes. I think as By Zimbabwe, we are very happy with the movement that we have seen in terms of consumption of Zimbabwean-made products. I mean, a few years ago, we used to have a situation whereby pretty much 80% to 85% of our products on the shelves were imported products, but that is since overturned, and we now have a situation where we're over 70% of products in our supermarket chains.
70%?
Yes, over 70% are local. I mean, some retailers and wholesalers even go as high as 90% locally produced products and services. So that is a very good sign. We are also happy because, as you may be aware, on the 11th of February, in the cabinet meeting of the 11th of February, came out with a resolution to say, as government, they are going to be prioritizing procurement from local companies, and further on to that, we saw the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, PRAZ, issuing a circular on the 10th of March, where they actually then directed government procurement entities to say, please, as you are doing your procurement, prioritize buying from local manufacturers. So that is very good. For us, government has come to the party in a big way, and our consumers, even our manufacturers, even business itself, has come to the party, has come to the realization that as long as we are supporting local companies, we are creating jobs, we are creating business for each other, and for government, it is also going to see an increase even in collections for the fiscus, because once government starts procuring locally, right? Remember, government is the biggest buyer in any economy, and once government starts procuring locally, that is going to help in a massive way, because remember, our local manufacturing sector is operating at around 52% capacity utilization. That means you've got an average of about 48% idle capacity.
And that's been the case at least over the past 10 years, where it has failed to sail beyond the 60% mark. While, of course, there's been that initiative by government as well as by other companies to buy locally, concerns are raised in terms of the capacity of the domestic industry, the domestic manufacturing sector, to actually meet the expectations and the requirements of government as well as other private sector institutions.
Well, I can confirm now that, like, that, as I mentioned, that our manufacturing sector, in terms of capacity, they're sitting on 48 or so % capacity that is lying idle. So in terms, I would be happy. I'm happy with the current situation whereby we are saying that there's that capacity. It shows that we are able to meet any local demand in terms of products that are made in Zimbabwe, right? Which is a good problem to have, right? Because we can then, but we are saying now government should then take the lead in terms of procuring local, because it will then act as a capacity filler. Now, when you increase your production levels, automatically, not only are you then saving foreign currency, but you are also reducing the unit production costs for our local products, which will then translate to cheaper products in the market. And then even for the consumers, the local products will be cheaper, and that will then help us to fight the competition that is going to be brought about by the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement that we've signed to. And also, it will also even help our exports. Our exports will now then be able to go out there and compete favorably, because the cost of production would have been reduced simply by government increasing their procurement locally. And I must add that ever since PRAS issued this particular circular, we've been talking to some of our members, and they've confirmed that they've seen an upturn in terms of business from government. Government procurement entities have now started supporting local companies. So very soon we are going to be seeing a huge benefit to our economy. Our Professor Mtunu with our treasury, national treasury, are going to be very happy even in terms of taxes that they're going to collect, because more people will be employed. That means the collection of more payee and so forth.
Well, I've got to come in there, and yet you also got a situation where a good number of products are still imported from beyond Zimbabwe's borders. You look at machinery, you look at vehicles. In the yesteryears, we would speak of Quest Motors. In Mutare, we would speak of Wheelovale. These were instruments. You'd also look at other players in the market that would provide for vehicles, that would provide, of course, for machinery, buses, and all of these were available on the domestic scenes. And yet when you then look at Zimbabwe's import bill, Zimbabwe spends at least $500 million importing vehicles in a year, in the space of a year, and that speaks to just how that would have a trickle-down effect, or the multiplier effect of what then Zimbabwe is actually importing from beyond Zimbabwe's borders. Now, the question is, in terms of time frames in your engagement with government, how long could it take before some of these gaps could be closed and some of these perhaps forms of equipment could be procured locally?
Thanks for that question. And in fact, you've hit it right on the nail, because if you look at our trade statistics, Zimbabwe, we always run a trade deficit of around an average of about 2 billion per year, right? In fact, this year alone, up to June, up to May rather, we're already running on a trade deficit of about almost $900 million. What that effectively means is that we've taken out $900 million in the first 5 months of the year. We've taken it out of the country, and each year we take out about on average 2.1 billion US dollars, right? That we are taking out there, which is very sad. Because imagine what that $2 billion could have done for this economy. How many jobs would have been created? You know, you talk about buses, you know, our bus and truck, you know, we've got bus manufacturing plants here in Zimbabwe. And you notice that, for instance, one of the bus manufacturers was telling us that their value chain is made up of 80 local companies. So imagine if we start supporting those buses, if government wakes up tomorrow and says, all government schools who shall not import any school buses. You can see the amount of school buses that we're seeing on the road. Imagine if those were being bought, you know, from AVM in Masasa, our local manufacturer, right? What that would do, and that industry is a high labor-intensive industry. They would, I think at its peak, those guys used to employ over 6,000 people, right? And if you just resuscitate that sector, another 80 companies are going to be revived. And those 80 companies are going to employ thousands of people. They're going to be paying taxes and so forth. So government, we implore government again on that front to then say, to just come up and say, all government schools and colleges should buy buses locally.
Right, no, and of course that remains more like the dream or the vision that we would want Zimbabwe to move towards. But clearly there are challenges in the market, which is why Zimbabwe has not yet graduated to that level. Now my question is, what are the biggest challenges facing local manufacturers, and how can policy address some of those challenges?
Right, thank you. One of the biggest challenges we've already spoken about, which is you know, the low capacity utilization that they're facing, right? And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you know, if government increases procurement locally, that will then address that challenge. But number two, our regulatory costs of doing business, they're very high. I mean, we last week on Wednesday, you know, I attended the National Competitiveness Report. They were launching the Competitiveness Report for 2024. And the issue of regulatory costs came out that they estimate that up to about 34% of profits, of business profits, are taken up by regulatory costs. From your profit, 34% goes to regulatory costs. That is huge, you know. And Zimbabweans are faced with up to as much as 51 different types of taxes and permits and so forth, and licenses that they are faced with. And that is not sustainable. And already, before anyone starts even putting anything onto the shelves or selling, they are hit by all these, you know, levies and taxes, and automatically your price is out. You are not competitive, you know. And if we don't address this as a matter of urgency, with the coming up of the Africa Continental Trade Agreement, our local industry is going to be wiped out. But I'm happy that I hear that the Minister of Finance is working on it, and announcements hopefully will be made soon to the effect of reducing some of those levies and taxes. The cost of electricity, again, you know, the National Competitiveness Commission put forward a matrix to show that Zimbabwe's electricity is the highest in the region. Our electricity cost. Only this morning I was hearing on the news that in South Africa, the Minister of Energy and Electricity is actually saying to Eskom, please reduce your energy cost further. They actually want to reduce it even further.
And yet in Zimbabwe, there is conversation around increasing
there you go.
that very cost.
You see what I mean? So in the region, you know, other countries are actually directing their energy suppliers to reduce their cost, while we are actually thinking of increasing. It doesn't make sense. So we need to reduce on that front as well. Look at our bank finances. You know, our interest rates that if you try and borrow from a bank, you know, the interest rates are out of this world. You know, again, that means that then, you know, business cannot operate without funding, without funding from the bank, long-term funding for that matter.
Right.
In Zimbabwe, our funding is short-term, number one, and number two, the interests are very high. So it's very difficult to do business, you know, in such an environment. You know, you can't. No business can operate only on a cash basis. You know, very few can do that. But in the majority, they need access to funding. They need to get long-term funding. They need to get it at a very reasonable rates.
Right.
You know.
How is By Zimbabwe promoting quality, innovation, and packaging improvements? There have been concerns, and we saw a blitz carried out by the Ministry of Industry at the close of last year, where they would get into some of the retail outlets and start to inspect some of the products for quality, and a good number of fake products actually picked out there. What are you doing as an organization to change the status quo, as it were?
Right, thank you. One of the things, as you alluded to a bit earlier, that we've done is, for instance, we recently held our Zim Brands Awards, which were based on a survey that we did through Select Research that went out into the market to get to hear from the consumers themselves, what do they look for when they procure locally and so forth, local product. And one of the things that came out of that, Zimbabweans, the issue of price is their biggest number one factor that determines what product they buy. I think about 79% of respondents said that they put price as their number one, and then the second, at about 74%, was quality. So quality is very important. A distant third was issue of customer service at about 36%. So you will see that Zimbabweans are looking for quality and they are looking for price, right, when they're making their purchase decisions. Now, unfortunately, on the pricing front, as Zimbabweans, as Zimbabwean manufacturers are faced with a plethora of issues that we've already spoken about that are making our Zimbabwean products, in some instances, uncompetitive, right? And we implore government, working with other business member organizations, like for us as By Zimbabwe, we work very closely with the CZI, Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, to come up with means and ways to then say, look, let's ensure that our Zimbabwean companies, meet certain minimum quality standards. That is why we also work together with SARS, Standard Association of Zimbabwe, very closely. And also, you've seen this insignia, the By Zimbabwe insignia.
Right, yes.
A lot of Zimbabwean products have got the By Zimbabwe insignia, which is an insignia that tells you that this is a Zimbabwean product, that is a quality product, right? That is that is made by Zimbabweans, right? And that
Right. So the question would be, do you have a process that certifies a product is By Zimbabwe accredited or By Zimbabwe certified, and how does that work?
Very good. So what then happens is that, as I mentioned earlier, that By Zimbabwe is private sector driven. So companies become members of By Zimbabwe. They apply to become members of By Zimbabwe. And once a company comes through and says, I would like to become a By Zimbabwe member, we then do a factory visit, a facility visit, to go through their processes so that we see whether this product is, number one, being made locally in Zimbabwe, and number two, once we've ascertained that this product is made in Zimbabwe, there's also a requirement that that product has got to be quality certified through a registered quality certification body such as SARS. So you need to your product have got to be certified by SARS for you to be able to have the By Zimbabwe quality insignia on your products. And therefore, so we go through all that process. But in addition to that, we've just finalized the local content rating. Because one of the things that keeps coming up is that people will say, but some products, they will say they're made in Zimbabwe, and then they're not made in Zimbabwe. Somebody's just coming and packaging them, right? So what we've done is we are saying we are doing local content rating. So you come through and say, I'm making Ibn Maputi or Ibn whatever, right, products. We then come through and we've got a whole criteria. We've got auditors who come through and audit your production process to establish whether this product is indeed made in product. And then after we've done that, we'll then rate you to say how much local content is in that product. So we'll give you a rating of 30%, 50%, or whatever it is, depending on the local content that you have in your product. Then once we've done that, we can then satisfy ourselves that this is indeed a local product. It's a Zimbabwean product, and then we can allow you to use the By Zimbabwe insignia on your product.
Right, now time for us to take a breather. We continue with the conversation right here on The Mint. The Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
The Phoenix Podcast has always brought you the best of the best.
I missed on that blessing, but I also regained it in some way.
In seasons 1 and 2, we introduced you to the industry's brightest stars, the ones at the top of their game, the creme de la creme. But season 3 promises to be even more exciting. We're bringing you even more fascinating guests, including the renowned farmer, Patrick Matadi. And to top it all off, our very own host, Ken Sharp, will be stepping out of the interviewer's chair and into the hot seat as he gets interviewed by a surprise guest host.
From the boss, we've been beaten, but we're not beaten yet. We can still rise.
Konapo Ipapo by ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.
While you're watching The Mint as we come to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, I'm Eben Mabunda. We are continuing the conversation with By Zimbabwe General Manager Alois Buruta on the state of affairs where domestic production as well as domestic consumption is actually concerned. Now, picking up from where we left off, of course, you've got an arrangement with Caucus, which is an association of content creators. What outcomes are you targeting from a digital partnership with Caucus and its 5 million plus followers?
Thank you for that question, Iban. As By Zimbabwe, one of the issue that we've been grappling with, is that I think we've mainly focused on attention. We've mainly focused on the boardroom. I'll call it the boardrooms. Where we've been talking to companies, government, and so forth. But we've not really taken the message to the streets, right? So this is just part of a broader strategy where we want to take the By Zimbabwe message from the boardroom to the streets, right. Where we are saying we would like any ordinary man in the street, if you stop somebody and ask them, have you ever heard of By Zimbabwe? They should be able to say, oh yes, I know By Zimbabwe. Oh yes, I know why we should buy local. I know why I should support the local products. So with Caucus, we believe that, as you mentioned, the Content Creators Association, they've got about 5 million followers. Right, and social media is now a very key medium, and therefore we've decided to tap into that, so that we then use some of these, the celebrities, the local celebrities that are loved by Zimbabweans, to then also embrace the By Zimbabwe message and take that message, home through their skits, through their various programs that they do, so that anyone, as I mentioned, because also one of the things that we also wanting to do is we also want to have a schools program. We want to take the By Zimbabwe message to the grassroots, to the schools, because our children, they play an important role in the household decision-making unit. If you go into a supermarket and you want to buy a foreign product and your son says, no, daddy, don't buy that, it's not made in Zimbabwe. We're told at school today that we should buy local products. Of course, you change your decision and you buy the local product. So that is all part of that broad strategy that we've taken to take the By Zimbabwe message to the streets.
Well, we have a question that's coming in from one of our online viewers, and the question is, how is an organization like By Zimbabwe helping local producers register their goods and access formal retail markets, especially considering that a lot of production like farming, fruits and vegetables and furniture is currently sold mainly through informal channels? We've got a huge chunk of informal business players that are in Zimbabwe. How are you bridging that very gap?
Yeah, thankfully, all the formal retailers are By Zimbabwe members, so we work very closely with them, and through that, we are then able to, if you come through and your product is and we've certified that the product is a quality product, is made in Zimbabwe, certainly we're able to then, because remember, By Zimbabwe is also a market access company, right? We want to take Zimbabwean products into the market. So definitely we are very happy to assist companies that would, or rather, upcoming companies, even your SMEs that would like, to showcase their products, to the Zimbabweans. And as I mentioned, we've got amongst our membership, retail, all the former retailers are there, all your top mines, so if you want to supply mines as well, or even all the big companies in Zim, But what we always say to people who come through is getting you listed is the easy part. The difficult part is you ensuring that your product remains very competitive, you maintain the quality so that you're not kicked out, because there's no point in a retailer stocking a product that is not selling. So you need to come through and put in place, your various marketing strategies, such as promotions, such as having merchandisers to push your product. Because remember, this is a very competitive environment that we are sitting on.
Right, I've got to come in. We are running out of time. You've got an upcoming conference in August. Tell us more.
Okay, so in August, on the 20th of August, we've got the Public Procurement Conference. Now, this is our third edition. The Public Procurement Conference is basically a conference that brings together all government procuring entities.
Right.
PRAS also comes through, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, the Office of the President and Cabinet, and all the government procuring entities. They come together and discuss various ways of how we can then use public procurement as a tool to stimulate our economic growth as a country. The very first one that we held, we're very fortunate that it was graced by His Excellency, the President, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, was our guest of honor. So and this year we've invited the Minister of Finance, Professor Mthuli Ncube, to come through, as well as the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu, to also come through. And remember, this is also, we run it together with the Public Procurement Awards, because what we are saying is that we would like to award procuring entities that are taking the lead in terms of supporting local. And again, the interesting thing is, because remember, as By Zimbabwe, we are data driven. So we are doing a research as well, currently running, whereby we are also asking Zimbabwean manufacturers to tell us which procuring entities are supporting local companies, which procuring entities are giving fair advantage to local companies, and also ensuring that our local companies are supported. So we've got it's actually the Public Procurement Conference and Awards, and we are very excited about that. We've been doing these awards as well, and various procurement entities have been getting them, and they're very happy about it. But this year we've said, let's also then do it according to a survey. Let's get a survey from the market to tell us which procuring entities are indeed supporting local companies. So this is a very important, and we'll bring in the pharmaceutical companies, we'll have furniture manufacturers, fertilizer companies, bus and truck, as we spoke about earlier, the leather and shoes. So they will have representatives from all those sectors that will come through. And of course, one of the major issues that we are going to that is going to be discussed is the issue of government paying local suppliers. That has been a very big thorn in the flesh. Because remember, yes, it's good to give orders to support local companies, but if you don't pay them, you're actually killing them. Okay? So we want to say to government, please, thank you very much for supporting local companies, but please pay them, because remember,
pay back the money.
Exactly, pay back the money, pay the money, because remember, the government for foreign orders, they pay upfront. Those foreign suppliers, they don't give our government any terms. They want them to pay upfront. So how can we be paying our foreigners upfront, and yet Eben here, who is a local guy, who's struggling, we are not paying him? So we want to say to government, please,
we have run
pay
out
these
of
guys
time.
on time.
Alois Burutsa, General Manager for By Zimbabwe. So thank you for appearing
Thank
on
you so much,
The Mint.
Thank you very much.
And of course, that's a wrap on The Mint. Do follow us on our social media handles at Zimpaper TV Network, as well as at ZTN Prime. Your views and your thoughts are important to us. I'm Eben Mabunda, the money man. Let them do what they do. When we do what we do, we mean business. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.